What is the secret to Tarantino dialogue?
I just get the characters talking to each other. So it's like me, the writer, is writing it, and yeah, I'm kind of controlling it for a while, but the idea is the conversation catches fire.
A foot massage. A foot massage is nothing. I give my mother a foot massage.
Some boys are into monsters. Some boys are into sports. Some boys are into cars. I was always into movies.
And I used to play with G.I. Joes all the time. You know, I had a whole bunch of G.I. Joes, those dolls. And I would always play movies. Basically, I would just kind of like do my version of whatever I saw, you know? And then I would like be acting out all the parts with all the G.I. Joes, and I would be like, you know, kind of like directing these little plays just for myself with the G.I. Joes.
But I actually remember my parents even saying, oh, Quentin's gonna grow up and be a director someday. Just because they just knew how much I loved movies. I didn't even think I knew what a director was then.
You know, I loved Brian De Palma. When his movies would come out, I'd be counting down the days to like the first show of his movie, and I would collect all the reviews and all the interviews, and I put them in like these De Palma scrapbooks and stuff that I had set up, you know, and then I would go see his film, first show, first day, all right? No one could go with me. I didn't want anyone else to, it was too, it was like a religious experience. I just sit there and watch the movie, all right? And that's sort of like just kind of taking it in, seeing all what the story was. And like around age 22, I got a job at a place called Video Archives in Hermosa Beach. You know, I even used to have these little mini film festivals in the store because, you know, like I had like the shelf that were mine, and every week what I would do is I would do like a new theme. You know, it was like a little retrospective, my own little rep house. Brian De Palma's Blowout. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's Brian De Palma's finest film. I started out as an actor. The thing about it though was, after studying for years and stuff, I just kind of realized that it wasn't, I just realized I had more of an affinity for movies. It wasn't enough just to appear in movies. I wanted the movies to be mine. And then I just started writing scripts, not to sell, but to direct my own.
And I didn't really think anyone was ever going to take a chance on me to actually direct a real movie and done in a real movie style. I thought I would have to, you know, just do it very guerrilla style.
After like 5 years of like rejection and just spending years on a project and it just never happening, having nothing to show for it, everything just came together with Dogs.
There is one scene in the movie that has a life of its own, and that's when Michael Madsen is dancing around and torturing that poor cop who's tied to the chair, and it's a very, very violent scene. In fact,
violence was like another character in the room. It hung over the proceedings. You kept waiting for every conversation to break out into it. The fucking money! Hey, look, Dan, I need you cool. All right, what's done is done. I need you cool. Are you cool? So so like they're in this warehouse for an hour, so are you. Every minute for them is a minute for you. You're stuck there with these guys in this claustrophobic, anxiety-ridden, pressured, very deadly situation with these guys for every second. And there's another character who is more, in fact I can say his name, Mr. White, all right, that Harvey Keitel plays. And to me, he's a hero, but at the same time, while you see him show sensitivity and show caring and show like that honor among thieves, sticks to his rules kind of thing, you also see him blow away cops without 2 seconds thought. All right, so nobody in this movie is completely heroic and completely villainous. All right, the reason they wore black suits, on one hand, it's a stylish decision, simply because I don't care who from Don Knotts to James Coco, all right? You put somebody in a black suit, they're gonna look better than they normally look.
And the Oscar goes to Quentin Tarantino, Roger Avary for Pulp Fiction.
Is Quentin Tarantino, who has directed only 2 films, a one-man new wave or just a flavor of the month?
What I love about the picture is the structure, the way he tells the story. There's many different stories, and literally the humor, the irony, and all based at the bedrock of American pop culture.
One of my favorite directors is Sergio Leone, and I always considered I was doing to traditional gangster films, like, Scorsese, kind of Goodfellow kind of movies, what he was doing to traditional Westerns when he did his spaghetti Westerns.
It's not the fact that I'm on this big crusade against linear storytelling. For both novels and film, 75% of the stories you're going to tell will work better on a dramatic basis, on a dramatically engaging basis, to be told from a linear way, by telling it this way. And I think in the case of Pulp Fiction, it gains a lot more resonance being told in this kind of wild way. When we finished Reservoir Dogs and we showed it at Sundance and it was all done and I was all completely and utterly done, I go, I'm going to Europe. I'm going for the summer. So that was my European time. Not only was I writing Pulp Fiction, but I was just living, what's it like to be living in Europe and going grocery shopping and all that kind of stuff. It was great. But naturally, being an American, I kept putting everything under an American microscope, especially pop culture, and the things that were different were the things that were funny and interesting to talk about with your friends.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
Is Pulp Fiction a better film than Reservoir Dogs?
I like it more.
You like it more?
I think.
Why?
It's more ambitious. It was harder to do, and it's like a.
This is the.
It's a jumping off point. I'm starting with Dogs here, and then I'm going somewhere else, and I'm really reaching for it.
Is the next film going to be in the crime genre?
I don't know what the next. There's a lot of kind of different genres I want to do, but right now I don't know what it's going to be. I never had any intention of trying to top Pulp Fiction with Jackie Brown. I wanted to go underneath Pulp Fiction with Jackie Brown, all right? I wasn't trying to blow your mind with Jackie Brown.
I've never played a character that had no redeeming social qualities whatsoever until this guy. Ordell has no redeeming social qualities. He's charming, but he's so deadly and conniving, it's incredible.
Nobody quite says my dialogue the way Sam does. Now, there's other actors that do it, and they can do it as good in their way. And Sam sings my dialogue.
I hate to be the kind of nigga that do a nigga a favor and then bam, hit the nigga up for a favor in return, but I got to be that kind of nigga.
All right, but I'm never going to be one of those guys who does a movie every year and a half or every year or something. 2.5 years sounds like a good thing. But there's a reason for that. It's because I never wanted to be a job. All right, I was going to do this World War II movie. Hell, that was like at least 6 months of research right there, all right? And so I started writing that, and then along the way, it started becoming this never-ending novel. You've heard of a novelist that, have this tomb, all right? They can never end.
A trunk full of notes.
Yeah, okay. This is a script, all right? And it's like this, and I can never end it, all right? And then finally I just said, I think I'm going to switch over to something else for a little bit. And then I started writing Kill Bill.
What seemed like the beginning of the movie to me is we were out with people from Pulp Fiction one night 10 years ago.
And I go, Uma, I've got the next movie for us.
We kept going back and forth and spun this idea together of this assassin who tries to leave the business and get married. And
one of the things she was like, Quentin, what if the first time we see the bride, okay, she's beaten up, blood all over her face, but when we see her, she's wearing a bridal gown. All right, and that was when the bride was born. I don't even know if she's that much of a hero. She's on a vengeance bloody trail. I don't know how heroic that is, all right? But she is admirable, all right, and a little scary, all right, because she's just, she can't be stopped.
Grindhouse, you did this with Robert Rodriguez?
Yeah, it's a double feature.
Double feature.
It was funny because, Robert uses a lot of CGI in his stuff, and I had never really used CGI before, except maybe to raise a wire. So then I wrote a car crash and go, hey, if I'm gonna use CGI, I'm gonna do some shit I've never seen before. Greg knows I can't stand CGI, so he just assumed that he was gonna have to build this. That's one of the things I'm real proud about it is, it's all done in camera.
Tarantino's latest film may be his most ambitious yet. Inglorious Basterds features a band of Jewish American Nazi hunters who unleash a plot to end the Second World War.
When I started it years ago and started writing it years ago, I had a different storyline. And the reason I couldn't really finish it years ago was because that storyline was just too big. In the opening scene, when he's interrogating this French farmer, the French farmer takes out a pipe and starts smoking it. And at some point, Londa says, hey, can I take out my pipe? And he goes, yes. And he pulls out this big giant calabash, which is the pipe that Sherlock Holmes smokes. Pre-production was going on, and I had dinner with Christoph. And I asked him, I go, let me ask you a question. In the script, it implies that this is definitely Londa's pipe, and he uses it to think. But let me ask you a question. What if Londa doesn't smoke a pipe? He knows the farmer smokes a pipe. And so at a certain point, he brings out this pipe. And what pipe does he bring out? He brings out the Sherlock Holmes pipe. One, you can say it's a sexual thing because my pipe's bigger than yours. All right, and the other thing, you can say, I know you're lying and I got you. I've got the Sherlock Holmes pipe. So maybe he doesn't smoke a pipe at all. It's simply just an interrogation technique to throw the farmer, send him more to hell. And I said, so what do you think, Christoph? He goes, no, he doesn't smoke a pipe at all. It is simply an act of theater. If one wants to think of this movie
as a fairy tale, you're welcome to. That's not really exactly where I'm coming from on it. Where I'm coming from is this. In the course of my story, my characters change the course of the war. Now, that didn't happen because my characters didn't exist. But if they had have existed, everything that happens is fairly plausible.
I've always knew that if I ever did a Western, I would kind of do it more in the spaghetti Western kind of vein, that kind of surrealistic landscape. When the spaghetti Westerns came out, they actually made those Hollywood attempts at Westerns in the 60s seem like old-fashioned overnight.
And that's why you've said my opening scenes are always my best, because that's what gets me going. If I see a great opening scene in my mind, then I know I'm onto something.
Django is a good example, because I was doing press for Inglourious Basterds in Japan. That there was this magnificent store in Tokyo that sold soundtracks. And they had a lot of great spaghetti Western soundtrack. I just bought so much, I just looked like a rich asshole. And so I get back to my hotel room, and then all of a sudden, it's like after listening to this stuff like for hours, I kind of sat down, and then out came that opening scene in Django, where, you know, the slaves are being led on the chain gang, and then Dr. Schultz with his wagon with the tooth going back and forth comes riding up, and then they had the whole encounter, and then I wrote the scene, and it's pretty much what's in the movie. And when I finished, I go, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing now.
The subject matter or whatever, it just happens to be the backdrop of what's going on. And it's not like Django's trying to end slavery or anything else. He's just trying to rescue his lady love from the clutches of wherever she is, and it just happens to be that.
After Django Unchained was over, I knew I didn't want to do any Django movie sequel or anything, but I liked the idea of there being like maybe a series of paperbacks that could be the further adventures of Django, or maybe go back in time and have a couple more Django Schultz adventures or something. So I just thought I would just try, I hadn't written a novel before, I thought I would just try my hand at writing this Django paperback, and at the time it was called Django and White Hell. And it was basically just, you know, and so I started writing, and it was basically just the stagecoach stuff. You know, all the stuff that we have in the story of the stagecoach, except instead of Major Warren, it was Django. I realized, because I was introducing such rough characters in this piece, and then there'd be even more rough, disreputable characters waiting for them at minis. At a certain point, I realized, well, you know what's wrong with this piece is Django. He needs to go. But the idea, though, was to, you know, like, no, I shouldn't have a moral center. There shouldn't be a hero. Everybody should be questionable. Everybody should have some disrepute as far as their reputation is concerned to some degree or another. And everyone should be untrustworthy. And you shouldn't be able, and this is even as important as that is, equally important was you shouldn't be able to trust anything anybody says. It's funny. I've always really liked movies about making movies and stuff. I had to make a few of them before I could actually be able to do it with any kind of authority. I was doing a movie, and it had an old-timey actor in it, and he had a stunt guy. He had a guy who'd been with him for the last 8 or 9 years. And I'm sitting across the set on an Apple box or something, and I look over, and I see the two guys, the stunt guy, the longtime stunt guy, and the actor sitting there just shooting the breeze, sitting in a couple director chairs, shooting the breeze, both dressed identically. And I saw the whole 9 years of their relationship. And I go, wow, that's a really interesting relationship. If I could, you know, if I was ever gonna do a movie about the making of a movie, that would be an interesting way to get into the story. That would be an interesting dynamic to kind of follow through on.
They come from this era when an actor and a stuntman had a greater partnership and had more say on what was going to be in the film. You know, what would take place in the scene, and at this point we're on the tail end. I say we because I'm on his coattails. I have a job if Rick Dalton has a job. But he's kindly hired me to, you know, work odd jobs, and so I am, I'm doing whatever he needs.
Anything I wanted to know about Rick's career or Rick's situation, I would just write it through the Al Pacino scene. And I would learn about stuff by him and Al Pacino talking about his career and talking about the business. Anyway, I know it's never going to make the dramatic telling of the story, but it was my way of finding it out. The weight was really on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Really?
That's kind of like my big epic. That's like my big wrap up the career kind of epic. And I think I did it. So I don't know what the next story is going to be. I'm imagining it'll be more epilogue-y.
And you picked, is 10 for you like a special, like, you know, some people have these numbers that they're like, this would be your 10th film.
Yeah.
Is it 10 for, or you just feel like one more is all you want to do?
Well, I think 10's a good number.
Okay, so
yeah,
it is.
I think 10, yeah. Also, I'm at that point where I think, okay, it's ready to bow off the stage, leave them wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Don't make any left-handed movies. Don't make any movies for the wrong reason. Don't muddy up my filmography with a bunch of out-of-touch old man movies. I've done everything I wanted to do.
Okay.
I've done everything I wanted to do. I mean, I've had just an amazing career. I've had amazing amount of luck, amazing good fortune, and I had no idea that the audience would. In fact, if I had to guess, I would guess that the audience wouldn't have accepted my movies.
Really?
And that ended up not being the case. And I've been able to work at in this business at the highest level. At the highest level, a director can work, and I want to leave at that high level.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I want to leave where a new Quentin Tarantino movie coming out is an event.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who like my stuff and who follow my stuff, and even that like, no, they want to see it, and they want to see it opening night.
Cool, let's do it one more time.
Let's go.
Why? Because